Good afternoon, everyone. This is International Master Robert Jamieson from Kids Unlimited in Melbourne, Australia. Now, in my last video, I showed you an interesting position where the player just found a move they liked. It was bishop takes rook, free rook, and they played it without too much thought, which is what a lot of young people do. They don't tend to weigh up the pros and cons. If they see something they like, they do it. Now, if you want to be a good chess player, of course, you have to take a more detailed approach and look at the position and try and see all the ideas in the position. Then you choose the one you like best. So if you only play the obvious first move that pops into your head that you like, you're probably going to miss a few good moves. Now, it was interesting because yesterday there was an inter-school tournament on and I was watching some of my students play. And I picked one game from that event by a young guy called James, and he towers up his opponent in 25 moves. The time control is 6 minutes plus 4 seconds increment. And at the end of the game, James had 6 minutes and 11 seconds left. So he had more time than he started with because he was just playing on increment. So he was choosing his moves in 2, 3, or 4 seconds. So my theory is perhaps he was guilty of what I suggested in the previous video, just finding a move he likes and playing it, as opposed to trying to find the very best move in the position. So let's have a look at his game and see if in fact he might have missed any opportunities. So here was white, d6, d4, opponent plays e6. So first hint, maybe my opponent isn't that strong because this isn't a proper opening. So knight there, and he moves the pawn again. So he's wasted a whole move. He could have gone there in one go instead of two. James grabs the free space. Now, a good player, of course, would probably play c5 to get his pawn play going and undermine white's center. But instead, black plays knight c6, blocking his c pawn. James develops his knight. And now we get another indication that black is not that strong because he plays a ridiculous move, b5. Free pawn. James says, thanks for the free pawn, recaptures with the bishop, developing the bishop, taking the knight. Knight is defended, and then James takes. Now, first little mistake. Okay, so if you're doing a swap, you need to ask yourself, am I gaining something from this swap? So normally, you would swap if your piece is not as good as the piece you are taking. So here, this is white's good bishop. It's on the opposite color to his center pawns. So the center pawns control dark squares. We need this bishop to control the light squares. So we don't really want to swap our good bishop for a knight. Second point, the knight is pinned. It's not going anywhere. So question is, why take it now? Normally you would wait until he attacks the bishop, which is pretty much a wasted move. And then if you want to swap, you can take it. And you thereby gain a move. So little mistake from James, but no big deal. He castles. Opponent puts the bishop back. And James plays bishop g5, hitting the queen. f6, takes. All right, stop and have a little think here. What would you play? Your bishop is attacked. What should you play? Maybe there are a couple of options. All right, I hope you've decided. So I gave this lesson to a student last night and he liked bishop h4, keeping the pin on the f pawn. James played bishop f4, which looked logical. So if your thinking process is, all right, what's he threatening? He's threatening my bishop. I don't want to lose my bishop, so I've got to move it. Where's the best square? I like f4. That's fine, but that's only one idea. If you want to be a good player, you then have to stop and say, okay, I've got bishop f4. That's my candidate move. Are there any other ideas in the position? And there is a pretty cool idea. I hope you saw it. White could have played knight e5. Now, of course, the pawn can't take the knight because the bishop would gobble the queen. And if he takes the bishop, we hit him with a friendly check, king up, another friendly check, and then a very friendly checkmate. So he can't take the bishop. So pretty cool move, knight e5, but James didn't look for it. He went bishop f4. All right, now black does another silly move, e5. So the pawn on e5 is defended once and attacked 3 times. So it's a free pawn. So what would you play here? I know I'd probably play pawn takes pawn without too much thought, which is what James played. But then I asked my friendly computer and it said, we can still do this. If pawn takes knight, we've got queen check. Where does the king go? Maybe he goes here or something. We could give him another friendly check. And we're winning the rook in the corner. Looks pretty good. All right. But James didn't put too much thought. He just took. The guy took back. James takes with the bishop. Right. So now he's attacking the rook in the corner and he's won a pawn. This is fantastic. Can black get out of the attack? Of course, he can play knight here to block it. But he played another really strange move. He blocked it with the bishop. Sure, he saved his rook for one more move, but James just takes it. So he's got a bishop and he's still taking the rook next move. So what a terrible defense. The guy plays queen e7, so he's threatening James' bishop. So James played the obvious move, bishop takes rook. But had he done what I suggested and had a quick look around, it doesn't take too much to see, well, maybe rook e1 winning the queen first is a better move. You can take the rook later. See, the moves are there. You just have to stop and look for them. All right. Anyway, James took the rook. Guy put the knight out. James took the knight again. Though this is more complicated. Rook e1 is pretty cool. He can block with the knight, but we can undermine the knight's protection by knight takes pawn. Now, I was thinking he'd probably play rook here. So if we take his queen, he takes our queen. But we have a cool move here. Can you see it? White could play rook takes knight. And if queen takes rook, we've got knight check. He moves somewhere, knight gobbles queen, and we're going to end up heaps and heaps of material ahead. But James didn't look for that. He took the knight. Queen takes back. All right. What would you play here? Because James thought for 2 seconds and played queen check. Now, I would certainly think maybe rook check is preferable, activating the rook, or maybe we can gobble his pawn, attack his queen, attack c7. So there's probably 3 moves you'd look at, but 2 seconds, queen check. His story was he wanted to get his queen into the game, which is generalized thinking, but we need specific thinking here because we can attack things and take things. All right, he blocked with the queen. James gave him another check, trying to win his bishop. Now, instead of c6 saving the bishop, the guy said, would you like to swap queens? By now, I'm pretty certain you can guess what move James played because he's looking, oh, free bishop, I'm taking the bishop. Again, if you stopped, had a look around, you'd probably say, well, maybe I can get a free rook move in first. Then I take the bishop. So I've gained a move. But we take the bishop. All right. Rook goes there. Rook check finally. King moves. Knight up. That's a pretty good move because it's threatening knight here. Guy goes here. All right. What would you play as white here? Because there's actually a few moves to look at. So have a quick look at the tactics. Tell me what you think. James played knight takes pawn, which I don't think is the best one by any means. I think I'd certainly go knight check and take the rook. You could even look at queen takes pawn, and then you fork and get the queen back. Anyway, knight takes pawn, and the guy said, thanks for the knight. James, of course, is still winning easily. Queen takes pawn check. Queen blocks. All right, what would you play as white here? A couple of ideas as well. But which one is the best one? So your aim is to look at all the ideas and choose the best one. So one idea, for instance, would be knight check, and we can then take the rook for free. Another good idea, queen takes rook. After queen takes queen, knight check, we've won the rook for free. Another idea, which is pretty clever, We go rook check, winning the queen. It's not bad. But James didn't choose any of those. He chose queen e5 check. Probably not quite so good. Now black could play king here or king here, and he's still alive, albeit getting crushed. But not being a strong player, he chose somewhere else. And of course, James said, thanks for the game, because it's checkmate. All right, now, black was a terrible player. It was a massacre. It didn't really matter what you did to beat him. But the lesson still holds true that there are at least half a dozen occasions where James had a better move than the one he played. If just stop and use some of those 6 minutes he'd been given to spend a few seconds on each move and say, is there anything else? Then maybe he would have finished him off even faster. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that lesson, and I'll see you next time.